Hi, and welcome to Showcase 10, our talk for August of 2017. We appreciate you being here today, both live stream and here in Nashville. I am Jack Weber. I'm a principal and a design leader at GS&P, as well as leading corporate interior design as well as workplace strategy. I'll be your moderator today, asking questions of our panel here up in front with us, and then opening it up for questions to both people here in the audience as well as via the live stream. Our topic today is about connectivity and flexibility, which are big buzzwords today when you're talking about workplace. The evolution of work styles are driving a big demand for environments that unify employees within the work environment. With millennials set to drive over half of the workforce by 2020, they are driving an interest in less conventional workplaces. So there's a real draw to the open environment as part of the workplace, but also collaboration and social interaction, as I said. But of equal interest is what comes from company leadership, which is also trying to attract and retain the best employees, so they're driving cultural change. A recent study from IBM, a global CEO study that I looked at, showed that collaborative environments and innovation are at the top of the list for things that both students who are coming into the workplace as well as CEOs who are leading those companies, that's the most important thing to them. So many of GS&P's corporate clients are really focused on these particular concepts. And NASBA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, that's a tongue twister, is one in particular and who is our client and was selected for Showcase 10 this year. So today we will discuss how our panel transformed NASBA's dark and disjointed space into a vibrant headquarters that would enhance collaboration, productivity, and integration or interaction between the employees. And we'll touch on a couple of other projects as well as our own office and how that supports the cross-functional interaction that we need in order to work together on these projects. We think this is an important topic, and we think it'll spark conversation both today as well as beyond today. So our panelists today include Amy Kleinfelter, who was the interior designer on the project, Andy Stabner, the structural engineer on the project, and Michael Bryant, who's the senior vice president and the CFO of NASBA. So now on with the questions. So I'm going to ask each person a question, and then if you all would like to add on to that question, or I may have a follow-up question after that. So Michael, I'm going to ask the first one of you. To give us a frame of reference for the NASBA project and the connectivity conversation, can you tell us a little bit more about NASBA's previous workplace and what inspired the company to seek a different environment for the new space?
Sure, Jack. Thank you, and thanks to Gresham Smith Partners for having me here and for the great work you did on our project. The National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, yes, we're called NASBA for a reason. We help make sure that CPAs all over every state, every jurisdiction in the United States do their job. So you can rely on your 401k statements, they follow professional standards. So our job is to regulate that industry to protect the public. When we first moved to Nashville in 1997, we built out one floor, that's all we needed. And we built it like an accounting firm with lots of dark furniture and carved up offices, and it's just not, it just became very tired. But as CPAs, what we really want is to have trust with our clients, to have transparency in our transactions. Those are vital to who we are as CPAs, and we wanted our office space to reflect that. Transparency, ability to collaborate, all those things. Well, as we grew, our one floor became 3 floors, and the spaces were not contiguous. So if you wanted to meet with certain people, you had to go to a different elevator bank and go up to their floor and meet with them. Well, of course, that discourages collaboration. It was a physical separation. It's also a cultural separation because the executive floor was the one that was separate. So it was not good for our culture, and we realized this. Our team knew that we had a lot of silos and a lack of trust across the organization. Managers would go into their offices, shut the door. Were they working? The people that reported to them didn't know. They might be surfing the internet. Who knew? But what we found by going to the open office concept with transparency, lots of glass, not only can they see their managers are working, but the managers can see their team and see what they're working on. Instead of sending emails, if you see someone across the floor, you can just walk over and talk to them. And if there's a place to pick up your stuff and go work, we call them enclaves at NASBA, the collaboration and the sharing of ideas goes up immensely. So the connectivity was just amplified by this space. And I guess I heard this quote during the process, and that is the outer reflects the inner. So if our inner values are transparency, collaboration, then we want our office to reflect that.
Great. That's great. Amy, I'm going to ask you the next question. NASBA's new office has been described as a total transformation. Compared to the space they came from, what were some of the key ways you helped them achieve the connectivity they wanted?
Yeah, there were several ways we provided that. The first one was just a visual connection. Their previous space had offices around the perimeter of the building. Those offices had hard walls and solid doors. So as Michael mentioned, you really couldn't see through to tell if somebody was even in there. So in the new space, we tried to provide all glass office fronts and moved those offices to the interior of the space. This allowed all of the employees to have access to daylight views and each other. Yeah.
And I would just add to that there's a lot of resistance when you tell people their walls and offices are going to go away. And there's a change process there that begins with despair. But quickly, as people, you talk to them, but until they get to the space, they don't realize how freeing, I guess, it is and energizing it is. So I just wanted to, we went through that.
And then a second way was just to change employees' behavior. So we were able to do this by providing a large break room on the 7th floor. See in the images in front of you. NASBA really encourages people to go use this space instead of eating lunch at their desk. So people from all the floors are coming down here and maybe having conversations with people that they've never run into and wouldn't have had a chance to talk to in the previous design. Another way on top of that we provided an actual physical connection between the space. As Michael mentioned, there was a physical barrier with that secondary elevator bank that was in the previous space. So now having all 3 floors contiguous and actually connecting 2 of the floors with a staircase allowed a more direct connection. People could just quickly go downstairs and have a conversation.
Great. Andy.
Yes, sir.
Another form of connectivity comes from our own design team, and in this case, working towards the design of the Monumental Stair that required the team to enlist your building engineering group, and you in particular, to help us. Tell us a little bit about the project and the importance of the connections between the disciplines, our disciplines.
Sure. A Monumental Stair is a great example of collaboration between Gresham-Smith teams and different disciplines. It's important as an engineer for me to know the overall vision for the project. What are the goals of the client so that I can tailor my solution, whatever that solution is, to meet that shared vision that's been set up with the client. So I can design great beams and big old columns and stick them right in the middle of the room, but that's probably going to hinder what the overall goal was. So if I understand that we're looking for a collaborative space, open space, connectivity, then I can ask the right questions and come up with the right design to meet that space. So in NASBA in particular, we had an existing concrete building. We had to cut a hole in the floor of it. So now we have this big hole. What do we do with it? So there's some things that structurally we have to do to support the new floor. Now we have to support the stair that's out in the wide open. What is that going to look like?
And did you do all those things?
Well, of course.
Okay.
And so I had to work with Amy and her team to figure out, all right, this is what the stair wants to look like structurally. These are our options and what we can do. So we went back and forth, and we were able to, walk up to each other's desk and have impromptu meetings and collaborate very easily.
So to add to that, or to ask another question, what was the technical challenges that we faced as part of this project with that stair?
In this building, since it's a concrete building, it's different than a steel building. A steel building, each beam is a discrete element, so you can touch one beam and you may not hurt the other beam. In a concrete building, it's all poured together, so if I cut a hole in this beam over here, the next one over is affected. So there's some implications structurally that aren't obvious to the non-engineer, so I have to be able to communicate that. Say, hey, if we cut the hole here, not only do we have to worry about this hole right here, but what's happening adjacent to it. So we had to work through that. And then things like details of a handrail. We've got this great opening, we've got this glass handrail. Well, now we have to be able to hold it up and somehow attach it to what's there and still make it meet the desired goals of the project and not look like an ugly detail that could happen.
Great. Amy, I'm going to ask you the next question. On the topic of multidisciplinary collaboration, which we were kind of hinting at, GS&P's new office, the Nashville office, is meant to break down departmental silos and make it easier for individuals and teams to work together. Can you talk a little bit about these efforts?
Sure. I didn't actually work on the 222 project team, but I do know they really wanted to increase collaboration and mobility within that office. The one thing that was really nice when we were working on NASBA, as Andy mentioned, is because we work in the same firm, he was able to just come down and quickly work with me and the architect to work out some of those details for the handrail and the stair. It's one of the great benefits of working in a multidisciplinary firm. So, and I think that type of collaboration is just going to increase in the new office because of the space supports that. We've got large hubs where we're going to be able to run into each other and have more conversations that we may not have had in this building where each department is kind of on a different floor. Yeah, and I think the design team has done a great job of not only providing those nice collaboration spaces, but also areas where they can go and focus and in those phone rooms and take conference calls. Another project that is a really good example of this is Schneider Electric. We're working on that project right now. 80% of their employees will actually be free address. So when they come in the morning, they can decide if they want to go sit at a workstation or go sit in their hub and work, or a collaborative area, or if they need to focus more that day, they can go into one of the phone rooms or one of the unassigned offices. So, and there are large stairwells that connect several of these floors that we worked with our structural group on as well, which was a good collaboration. This one's a little different than NASBA, just in the type of building, but.
So tell me, Andy, was that collaboration for that stair any different than what we did for NASBA?
There were some differences and some similarities. I mean, it's an open stair, so a lot of the same details had to be worked out. But this was in a steel building, so that had its own set of challenges. Also, we had 6 floors at Schneider that we're trying to connect, and the city of Franklin was being very particular about how they wanted to view these stairs. Is it one big stair? Are we connecting 6 floors? Do we have to have smoke evac system? So as the city was reviewing this, the design team had to be pretty nimble and flexible to adjust to what the city's asking for, not just from a structural point of view, but also from a mechanical point of view.
Great, thank you. Michael, back to you. It's been a year now since NASBA has moved into the new space. How did it turn out, and what do you think are the biggest changes that have been brought about?
Yeah, it was such a huge success, and you don't know that, until a little bit after the project is finished. I say that it's been a huge success because of the behavior of our employees and our volunteers. We have a lot of visitors as well. It dramatically changed the culture. An example, personally, people share more about the favorite movies, restaurants, what they did over the weekend, because they're in proximity to everyone. We have a fantastic common area for employees. We call it kind of the break room. It's where most people eat lunch. We have some smaller pantries on the other floors. But this brings people together from all across the organization. So that's changed. Also, small teams from a work side, not personal. Some managers have large groups that they manage, and there are small teams in those groups. They always felt disconnected from the organization because they just didn't interact with many people, and now they have the opportunity.
So, do you have any stories or anecdotes or anything to share about how or what you've heard from people as they kind of experience the space?
Yeah, I have one. A designer, an engineer, and an architect walk into. No, I'm just kidding. I think the best one is, NASBA is the organization I've described. We also have a 501c3 charity organization, and what they do is open student centers at universities all across the country. When you get students who are about to graduate from business, the culture they go into is going to have a lot to determine their business ethics. So we've set up these centers so people can learn ethical leadership before they hit the workplace, and they can recognize things that go wrong. In Iran or Bernie Madoff, if you go into a culture where cutting corners, okay, I'm talking too much about this. I'm sort of passionate about it. Anyway, we have a small team that does this. They developed an ethical certification software product that is being used in classrooms and colleges across the country. With any software project, you have to toy with it and modify it slightly. It's a cool product. It's situational based. It's not just questions that you answer. So they're able to get up now because they were sort of the redheaded stepchild of our. Can you say that nowadays? I think it is. Of our organization, they were put just wherever there was space. And so now they're all together and they have an enclave, hear them, with video capabilities. They can bring up that program, they can look at how it works, and their joy is compounded by the efficiency that they can do the project on. So that's my favorite anecdote.
All right, I'm going to go rogue here and ask, what would you have done differently? Would you have done this project again?
Yeah. Well, one thing Amy said about, I think, the Snyder project you're working on is it would have been nice for us to have empty offices for people that visit. Our offices are full. And so that would have been nice. If we'd had more space, I would have liked to have had a couple of more phone rooms for employees. So just those two things, by and large, I would have done differently. I want to say this about the staircase. It's not just connectivity, it's the beauty of it. People now come into our corporate office and they see an international accounting regulation firm. And that's the image that staircase gives us. It's very powerful.
That's great.
Hope it stays up.
It will.
It's great that this has been such a success, I think, for you as well as for us. I think we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you all. And the team, the panel in front of you is only part of the team that worked on the project. And the slide in front of you shows the rest of the team that worked on the project, worked diligently, and we're working through another part, an expansion of that office today. So we're gonna move to taking questions from the audience as well as via the online, the people in the other offices. So with that, I'll let you take the mic and ask the questions.
Okay. Yeah, so someone has asked, some people say that open work environments actually impede productivity. What do you guys think about that?
I think a lot of times clients are pushing that direction for open office, and they don't necessarily understand what that entails. They think they can just take everybody out of an office, put it in a workstation, and everything's going to be great. And obviously that's not going to work if you don't have the spaces that are going to support that workstation environment. You have to have the phone rooms and places where people can go and meet and collaborate and focus. It's all required. You can't have just part of it.
I'll add that the tools, the spaces, but also the tools that allow people to move around and use those spaces, and then things like sound masking and the acoustics are important. Obviously, everybody complains about acoustics and noise, and even people in offices complain about noise. So it's a big issue, and it's important to address those topics, but it's also important to give people the flexibility to move around and work where they need to work, doing what they need to do.
Okay. A good follow-on to that is a question we have for Andy. From an engineer's perspective, what are your thoughts on the new Nashville office?
Careful.
I'm going to use a quote from our own John Hurst, who said, "I'm an engineer and I believe in workplace strategy." As NASBA went through, there is some reluctance to change at the beginning. It's a little bit of an unknown. I've been working like in one way for so long. How am I going to do it differently? So there's going to be a learning curve and some obstacles to get used to working in the new space and how to maximize the use of that space. So I think we all should be just aware of that, but kind of go in there with an open mind to say, all right, change can be hard, but it also can be good.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the room? Lynn? All right.
I'm actually curious about the physical transition, like where everybody leaves their old office one day and comes to the new office the next day. And was it mayhem? Was it exciting? I mean, if there's one piece of advice that you could give us as we go through this, what would that be?
It's a great question, and you know, no matter how much you plan for it, there's going to be bumps. We had snow the weekend we were supposed to move, so that got delayed a week, and there's some moving people. You know, there's things happen. We were fortunate enough that we were able to stagger the floor movement, so we got a new floor. Someone moved out. It was right where we wanted it. Put us all together. We built it out. We moved the 7th floor down to the 6th floor. Built out 7. 8th floor. We got nowhere to go, right? We got nowhere to put those people while we build out. So the IT department went into the training room, spent a couple of months there as we built out the 8th floor. My facilities manager told me it looked like bears had lived in there when they left. We gave them all sound canceling headphones during the transition. We let them know we understand this is not ideal, but it'd be worth it in the long run. Of course, IT, they're wide open now, and they shoot Nerf guns up there, and they love it. I mean, it just couldn't be any better than for that culture, having an open office. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely. So what piece of advice would you give us as we go?
I think you really do have to be open-minded and nimble and give it a chance. You think about people that get hired after you move, they know nothing different. That's where they work, and that's where they've always worked. It's only because you have a perspective of having worked somewhere else that it seems scary.
What about the different types of collaborative spaces that you design? Do you see people using some of the spaces that would kind of surprised you, that they're kind of where they're drawn to kind of do their collaboration work?
We put in the units where you can see the scheduling next to the conference rooms. And we had a big debate about scheduling enclaves. Could you schedule them or not? And in the end, we decided not to allow people to schedule them for longer than, I think, a half hour. And it had to be immediate. You walk up, there's no one in there, you schedule it, maybe an hour, and you can reserve it. Those are what get used, the ones that aren't scheduled. The scheduled conference rooms get used for larger meetings, or they get reserved for recurring meetings like IT projects. I'm surprised at the utilization. We only had half the 8th floor, but now we've got the other half as well. A subtenant moved out, and we're building that out with the help of Gresham. And so we're adding more up there on the 8th floor, so people will have more places to collaborate. It's not just a pipe dream. It really happens when you build them. So.
This one came in from one of our other offices. It says, as a structural engineer, what were some of your key lessons learned on the NASBA project?
Sure.
Andy?
No.
Touched on it a little bit already, but the handrail in particular presented some challenges. We talked a lot about just how you support that glass. You know, when the finished product, you see 2 little plugs on the glass, and that's all you see, but there's a lot going on behind there. And so we looked at different types of glass and how that glass wanted to get connected, and then how does the handrail actually get attached to the glass, and then just structurally making sure that it all works. So we spent a lot of effort in the design phase, but unfortunately there was still effort in the construction phase once the contractor got involved. and the selection, how he was selecting glass, and there was just some hiccups there. So I think all the effort we did in the design phase, even though we had to replicate some of that in the construction phase, was worth it. Because if we hadn't done all that effort initially, then the construction phase would have been that much more of a headache, and we wouldn't have had a basis to work off of. So paying attention to the details in this type of project is important.
I will add that anytime you put a stair, a new stair in an open environment or in an office, and we've experienced this a lot, it's complicated. It's not an easy process. It takes a lot of coordination internally, but it's also about the codes that you're dealing with. In particular, you mentioned Schneider and the fact that they wanted to connect open stairs through multiple floors. Well, it's all dependent on how they view the codes and the codes that are in place and the things that, how they interpret those codes. So you have to spend a lot of time and make sure it's really clear with the jurisdiction before you design it on what they're going to allow and what they don't allow. And then comes the internal coordination of just figuring out how to actually design it and put it in place.
Okay. Any others from the room? Okay.
So we've talked about the connectivity elements that you designed into NASBA, but what are some other cool ways that you've designed elements of connectivity into other Gresham Smith projects?
Sure. Jackson National comes to mind. We added an expansion to their existing headquarters in Michigan. It was a whole brand new building. And that building, we had 2 office wings with a large atrium in between. So obviously, if you're separated by a huge atrium, it's really easy for employees not to connect across that. So as a design team, we decided to put all of their kind of big functions, like the big meeting rooms and their large break room, in this one area that sat in the middle of that atrium. We called it the tree house. And it kind of forced everybody from those 2 wings to come to one zone and interact and have conversations that they could have easily avoided if we had not put that there.
I'd say another one would be Lifeway, which is under construction, which also has a stair, but we've used one of the egress stairs to become this communicating stair and tied it into an atrium space between every other floor. And so it becomes this visual connection between every other floor so that people can see each other working. We put in open workspaces kind of above and below, so people get to interact that way and then use the stair in a different way than you would normally use a fire stair to be able to communicate between the floors. So.
Okay, I think we have another question from online.
Yeah, so someone in our Tampa office has a question for you, Michael. They said,
Yes.
Have you received any feedback from the users regarding the natural light in your new office?
We have. I mean, that's probably the most positive thing that we get feedback on. You have to remember that they didn't used to get any because they were in the center, blocked by perimeter offices. There's been nothing but, hey, thank you so much. It feels better. I feel more energized. The sound masking, on the other hand, has not been universally a hit with everyone. Some people find it annoying. It can pose challenges to get it calibrated right. Without a doubt, in open office, you've got to do something right, so people feel like they have their own space that they can go to and not hear 10 conversations. But I do add that the sound masking was probably less welcoming than the opening the light to everyone. Now, then you have blind management, we call it. We think that's kind of funny because we always say we have blind management. And so, but you know, are you going to have them all open? Are you going to have them all closed? Do you have a CEO who's OCD about they're all open or they're all closed? So that was the only thing with the light we had to deal with.
Another question for you, Michael. Do you have a favorite feature or space in the new office?
Probably the staircase and just the impact people get when they come off the elevator to check in. It's very impactful. And then, you know, of course, it's also utilitarian. You can move up and down it to go to different floors. seems to be holding.
That's good.
Any questions in the room?
Yep. Someone in Tampa has a question for the design team. It says, did the stair present challenges with the mechanical design?
I think one of the challenges, not necessarily just with the stair and the mechanical design, is just this building it's a really old building. So it's been redesigned, I don't know how many times, but a lot. So when we got into demolition and took the ceiling down, it's not like it's a clean slate. You already have all these ducts running through, just a lot of stuff up in that ceiling. So just working around the mechanical system in general, not just for the stair, but just in general, for any walls that needed to go to deck, I regularly, it's nice because they're down the street from us, so regularly I would get called to come to the site to just figure out how we were going to work around that.
I don't think it's any different than any other, working in any other existing building where you have things that are already in place and you're trying to put something new there and you just have to coordinate well. So I don't know that it was any more complicated than any other project like that.
Okay, I think we have, do you have one more question? Okay, anybody else in the room?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I noticed in looking at the pictures that you have, the facilities are very pretty and very bright, and I definitely like the light. Not only from the natural, but the indoor lighting and the coloring on the walls and ceilings. So kudos to the design team.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amy had to talk us into the blue and yellow, but it really turned out well.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I'm going to hand it over to our CSO, Randy Gibson.
Thank you. Well, wonderful presentation, great panel discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone that participated today, whether it be here in Nashville or across the GS&P world. And really a special thank you to our client, Michael Bryant. We really appreciate your insights about how the space came together and how it's functioning. And we really appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you and your management team developing this space.
Well, thank you, Randy, but honestly, it's extremely mutual.
Great. So we hope you enjoyed learning more about NASBA space and the importance of connectivity and collaboration. The purpose of this whole showcase program really is to spur internal dialogue about how we create and make better solutions for our clients. So that's what we hope that this does. And I would remind you, if you haven't already, there are 2 other showcase events, so to speak, in August 1. And really, I guess until next time, when we're rolling out 3 more in September, we'll see you then. So thank you very much.
Thank you.